welcome to Around the Well, the official podcast of the town of Wellington. I am Jerry Martin, your host and the communications specialist for the town of Wellington. Thank you for supporting this 7th episode of Around the Well as we aspire to create a space for the discussion of issues that impact our town and our community here in Wellington. Episode 7 focuses on the Wellington Main Street program's Historical Preservation Committee and features a conversation with community members Melanie Murphy, Sherry Leeper, Annie Lindgren, and Mark Gabbert about what the committee is and why historical preservation is so important for the future of Wellington. We are joined today by Melanie Murphy, Sherry Leeper, Annie Lindgren, and Mark Gabbert. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Thank you for having us.
To start things off, can we go around the room and introduce ourselves and maybe talk about how we are connected to the town of Wellington?
Okay, I'll go first. I'm Mark Gabbert. I've served as pastor at Zion Lutheran Church and been connected there for 21 years. That gives me some history, partly because the church itself was established in 1914, so I've spent a lot of time just learning more about the history of our church. But other connections in this town, I served as a substitute teacher in our schools for quite a few years, and then as a coach, which is something I continue to do at the middle school level. I've coached multiple sports now for almost 30 years, so I've gotten to know a lot of folks through that. Matter of fact, now I'm coaching the kids of people I coached. So I've also been involved through the Wellington Food Bank. Now it's called Wellington Food Pantry. Been director of that for quite a few years. Been on the board of directors for the Wellington Chamber of Commerce. And now I'm part of Grace Village nonprofit that's working on a project called the Community Services Center, which will provide a new home for the Wellington Food Pantry, bring the services of Larimer County Human Services to Wellington, and some mental health resources as well.
Great.
Hi, I'm Annie Lindgren. I am a resident of Wellington. I've lived here for 20 years almost, and I had previously been the executive director of the Wellington Main Street program. I was the executive director from 2017 to 2019, and I kind of stepped in during a time where the program was engaged in some historical surveys through a grant-funded the Colorado State Historical Society and a partnership with the Chamber of Commerce and the Main Street program. There were 25 building surveys that were completed during that time and during my time with the program. And so I had the joy of learning so much about the history of Wellington and ended up just loving that so much that I was writing articles about it for the newspaper. And even after I stepped down from that role with the Main Street program, I was still writing stories for North 40 News and kind of helping to celebrate the history of Wellington. Also involved in some walking tours that we did and some work around keeping that momentum going of celebrating Wellington's history. I own a business, Sunshine Inc., and I am a freelancer. I work mostly in the nonprofit world, but I do still do some more fun historical stuff, so still involved with the committee.
Great, thank you.
I'm Sherry Leeper. I'm pretty much a lifetime resident. We moved back up here when I was 5 years old to help my grandparents with the grocery store. They owned the Wallen Grocery. That would be I.H. Wallen and Margaret Wallen. My parents were Barbara and Wilson Leeper. My father was very active in rebuilding the town from a long time ago. So I've been actively involved with the town for a long time. I'm now retired after caring for my mother until she passed away. And Melanie contacted me and asked me if I wanted to be involved with this. And so it's been pretty exciting to get involved and talk about the history because, like Mark, I've been here a while.
Great, thank you.
I am Melanie Murphy. I have lived here since 2004, so 22 years this July. I have been volunteering for this program for 8 years since Annie was actually the director, so I've been a volunteer in some capacity. I joined the board a little over a year ago. I am now the president of the Main Street Board, and I am the chair of the Historical Preservation Committee.
Oh, great. Well, once again, thank you all for being here. And another question for everybody here in the group. What comes to mind when you think about the history of Wellington?
The first thing that comes to my mind, something that I think has become a little more well known over the last few years, but as a coach and a teacher, I would always point to kids that Byron Whizzer White was born and raised here in this community, and it's a very small community at that time. Not sure what the population was, but I know his graduating class was very small. But he went on to be an All-American football player at University of Colorado, drafted high in the NFL, and then beyond that was a Rhodes Scholar. Eventually got all the way up to become a Supreme Court justice. And I've used that to try to convince kids that might be a smaller town, but big things can come from small towns.
Yeah, it's a great example to look up to for sure.
My answer to this question was initially beets, because that's such a big part of Wellington's history. But I just want to expand that to share that, of these historical surveys that we have and the information about the history of Wellington, there's just so many wonderful stories in there. The Byron White is one of them that's throughout that. But we just have a lot of really fun stories in this community.
Yeah.
I always think about the small town part of it. Everyone, a lot of the folks who are here have been here 2 or 3 or 4 generations, 3 generations in my family. And that small town, everyone pulls together. When there was a blizzard, everybody came together to help the folks that were stranded. Everybody got together for Wellerama and built floats, and we're so excited when Main Street was paved. There's a lot of really positive, good things that I'd like to see more of in the future.
Great.
I think my fun historical fact is about the mammoth remains that were found in 2000. So many people don't know why we have Welly as our town mascot. So I think it needs explaining.
Mm-hmm.
The bones were found, it was tusks and bone. It was some sort of a leg bone, I believe. And it was actually dropped by CSU. But that is why Welly is our town mascot. So I think that's a fun fact.
Yeah, absolutely. And then kind of conversely, what is something that you think people miss or don't really fully understand about the community?
I want to point to something called Let's Talk Wellington. And if that's the source of the information that you would be exposed to, you would think that we're a town that doesn't get along, that has all sorts of problems that we have to deal with. And I think it's actually the opposite of that, that if we were to focus on all the positives in this town, it would be a very much longer story. And I think that that's really important, that we have this concept or theme, I guess it is, called Love Where You Live. And I see that as being a very important thing, that if we in this community would really come together and celebrate all that we have in common and all the things that we treasure, I think it would be something that would set us up for a better now and a better future.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that, Mark. I see that in the history of Wellington, too, where a lot of the things that are currently going on have been going on for a long time. And I think that if there were opportunities to really understand more about our history and where Wellington came from and kind of the unique factors that have led us to where we are today, that there would be a lot more people joining and getting together for the benefit of the community versus the opposite.
Sure.
Yeah, I would have to echo the same sentiment. I think if we were able to find the positive and the things we have in common and the history we have in common, the people we know, yes, we have agriculture, but we have so much more. But finding those positive points that we can share with each other and work together, getting people more actively involved, having more community-type get-togethers, not just parades and all that, but dinners and charities and what can we do to help each other. You've got a neighbor who's having a hard time. Can we rally around people and help them out? And so they find out that, yeah, we really are positive and we really do care.
I agree. Those are all great points. I do think that one thing people tend to miss is our amazing downtown. Mm-hmm. People just don't realize that it is down there because we are such a bedroom community, but the importance of shopping local is just so incredibly important anyway. But those people are the people that are sponsoring the things that allow us to do all the incredible things we do as a program. Mm-hmm. So,
Great.
Yep.
Melanie, you talked a little bit about your involvement with the Main Street program and the Historical Preservation Committee, which you are the chair of. Can you tell us a little bit about what the committee is and what its goals are?
certainly. I actually ended up on this committee because I was involved with the Kiwanis Club in the past, and we did a historical tour for the second graders. And we would have the kids come around, and everyone, we dressed up in a costume with their little building and give your info. And the kids really enjoyed that, and then COVID happened, so that sort of fell by the wayside. And then Caitlin approached me about helping with the 10-year celebration for the Main Street program when we were doing the walking tour, because I had been involved with that before. But essentially, we are just a group of local people that are insistent that we preserve our history. This town is growing and changing, and we need to make sure that we're documenting everything and have this for our future generations.
So, just speaking as a long-term resident, why do you think that that's so important and so vital to hang on to that history?
I think that it's just incredibly important that our history is documented and is documented accurately for the sake of our future generations. History does tend to repeat itself, as we know.
And Annie, somebody who has been a recorder of history on a professional level, why would you say that it's so important for towns and communities to keep a record of their past?
I think that history is a major part of a community's story. These downtown districts were built to have everything a community needed. And in Wellington, that's Cleveland Avenue. And so I think our history is a common ground that has brought people together and can continue to bring people together in celebration and community. Knowing our history helps us understand why certain parts of the community look the way they do. It helps us share the stories about that part of the community, and it helps us understand more about what our assets and our opportunities are that make Wellington unique and worthy of celebration.
And what would you tell somebody who doesn't think it's important to have that recorded history?
I would say that in the same sense of not having a historical record of your family, it's a missed opportunity to connect with your roots, to celebrate your uniqueness, and understand what makes your family special. Knowing our history helps us understand where we came from, both the good and the bad. And it also helps us understand what is worthy of preservation, as historical assets are not infinite. Without preservation and celebration and efforts, they can go away and be completely forgotten.
Thank you. And Mark, as somebody who serves the community and kind of helps make connections, how does being connected to history help a community foster those connections amongst themselves, amongst the residents?
Well, I would point to something a little bit broader, and something I've learned over the years from people of the Jewish faith, is that when they think of history, they think of something they're closely related to, as if they experience it themselves. For example, the annual Passover Seder meals, they speak of the events of the Exodus as if it happened to them. I think if we could capture more and more of that mindset, for example, just what our forefathers and ancestors, I should say, went through, both the positive and as well as the mistakes they made. And we can think of that nationally, we can think of it locally, that there's a lot that can be learned. Like someone pointed out, if we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. So I just think that connection to your town will just make for a closer knit community where people will continue to really care about and for one another.
And I guess, sort of the opposite of that, what are some of the impacts of not having a well-connected community?
Well, I think then you're tending to rely on sources of information like Let's Talk Wellington and others, or just the talk about town that sometimes can turn into gossip and pointing out the problems. And we are not naive. We know that there are problems and challenges that need to be addressed. And the context in which to address those that's most healthy is one that where people really care about each other. Back to that theme of love where you live. Part of being connected with history might mean you'll love your community more, but we also think of love as an action, and what are things that we can do as people who have this love for a community? How can we serve and help others within this community?
Yeah, great. And Sherry, as somebody who has been part of the community for a long time, what do you think has changed the most about Wellington?
Right off the top of my head, the size.
Sure.
Obviously, we've got a lot more people, and I think in some ways that has caused us to become more alienated from one another. There's not a lot of potlucks for 12,000 people. There's just not,
Sure.
We're limited by that. On the other hand, you can have lots of smaller get-togethers and groups and inviting people in to join the historical society, things like that. You get people involved, and then they go saying, hey, you should come to this. I think we could all reach out our hands and say, let's do this, because communication is going to be key.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And positive communication is what's going to make us move forward. All of those people who are working so hard to redo downtown, who are working so hard to put the history together, these are all important aspects of keeping the town moving forward and keeping the town alive. So it's very different than from what it used to be, but we have so many more amenities, we have so many more positive people, so many wonderful, intelligent, caring, involved human beings that really want to make this the best town it can be and love this town just as much as I do or anybody else does. I think we need to tap into more of those folks too.
And you kind of mentioned we have more changes on the way coming with Main Street. Why do you think it's important for a community to have a sense of its past while it experiences this sort of change?
If you take a look at some of the historical pictures, it used to be dirt roads. It used to be mud roads when the storms were bad. And I can still remember, because I was alive when we first paved Highway 1 Main Street and had the first Wellerama, and that was all about getting that done. It was a big, huge process. A whole lot of people were involved. I was really happy to see when they started working on the renovation here now. They did the same thing. They had the open house. They had people come in. And you don't always get a lot of people, but the more people you can hook into, hey, could you help us with this, or what about that, or what kind of seating would you like to see downtown? It's a little thing, but then I had a choice in it. I had a little bit to help with it. It gives you that pride. So it's going to be real interesting to see what happens. It looks like it's going to be a big change, but a really positive change, which is really nice to see.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you all for answering those questions. This one's for anybody who wants to jump in. How can community members get involved in telling Wellington's story?
That one I can help with. You can reach out and shoot us an email at WellingtonMainStreetCO@gmail.com, and we will get you on our email list for our meetups for Historical Preservation Committee.
Great. And is there anything specific that we need to help kind of preserve that history?
I would say that, in my time of helping to share about Wellington's history, we have a shortage of photos. There are gaps in history that we would love to hear more about, and there are so many people who live in Wellington who've been here for so long and have such great stories to share, and we would just love to get more people involved and give them a platform for sharing their story about the history of Wellington, because all of this is just so important, and we don't want to lose any of these stories with time.
We sort of take photos for granted today because of our smartphones and everything. Everybody's got a million on them all the time, but it wasn't always the case. And then, before we go, one more kind of group question. What's the story or memory about Wellington that you personally want to make sure is included in the record of the town?
Well, I pointed to the Whizzer White story, but the organization I've been involved with, the Wellington Food Bank, has been remarkable too, because as the town has grown, obviously the needs that some folks have for food assistance has grown, and this community has always responded generously to supporting that, and it just shows that we are a community that cares, and I think that needs to be celebrated.
Great.
We're going to take things in a different direction, but one of the other pieces of history that's always been interesting to me is Larimer County. There were a lot of dry cities in Larimer County, and Fort Collins is one of them up until 1969. And so people came to Wellington for their booze, and that was a big part of downtown Wellington for a lot of years, as this was the place to come for all of that. And there's a colorful story in that as well, and I think it kind of carries on a little bit, and it's just something fun to be able to share in a unique aspect of what made Wellington popular in the earlier days as a resource in Larimer County.
Great.
Yeah, I think that we could. I've gone to the reunions and talked to the people, and they're really excited. Melanie and Caitlin came with me to a breakfast. They're really excited. They want to share. They have lots of stories to tell, and that's one of them. That Fort Collins was dry and we weren't. I would also like the story of my grandparents and their grocery store, and my dad and what he did, dad and mom both, to rebuild the town. Those are both really important to me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think everyone has covered all the things that I was going to touch on, because we all meet and discuss all these things and have been working on getting these things done and documented. So,
Well, great. And I guess those are all the questions I had. But before we go, is there anything about Wellington's history or about the importance of community history in general that we haven't talked about that you want people to know about?
I want people to remember that this was a small town first. So the folks who are moving in from Fort Collins and other areas, and they come in and they see a store like Ridley's and they go, well, that's not a King Soopers. No, it's not, but we're a small community. Mm-hmm. And for those of us, my grandparents had the one-room store, the bank, which is soon to be the ice cream place. Mm-hmm. That was the only place to get groceries. And my grandfather used to get up at 11 o'clock at night because people would call and say they didn't have any milk for their baby. Wow. So he would go open the store because you could do that. Mm-hmm, right. It was a simpler time, a safer time. But Ridley's is not a bad place. Mm-hmm. The stores that we have are not bad places. We have small boutiques, we have small restaurants, but they're really good. And so I guess I would like to see the people who come in who are used to Fort Collins and bigger areas, maybe take a look at, well, okay, it's not Fort Collins, but we have this, and this. I can't complain. Within 6 blocks, I can get everything from groceries to coffee to gasoline to a massage to, I mean, literally, that's one of the things about smaller towns. You can do that sort of thing. So be interesting to see some of the new folks take a different perspective.
Sure.
I would just want to add that for anybody who is interested in learning more about the history of Wellington and wants to know where to start to learn, the Wellington Library has a lot of great resources for that. The surveys that the Main Street program did are available in the library. They're also available on the Wellington Main Street program website. So you can kind of dig in there, but the Fort Collins Museum Discovery also has a lot of really great information as well for anybody looking to learn more. And we're kind of excited for the future of this committee, and that we're working on doing some more historical tours and getting some signs put out. So there's some signage that'll help people just see more about the history as they're walking in the downtown area. So lots of excitement to come there too.
Great.
And ideally more historical surveys as well. That is on our list.
Sure. Well, thank you all very much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
More information about the Wellington Main Street program, including a historical building spotlight, is available on the organization's website at wellingtonmainstreet.org. In the coming weeks, information about the Historical Preservation Committee will be made available via the Main Street website. Currently available on the website is a link to download the Districts app, which is now part of Locable. Districts app users have access to the Downtown Wellington Historic Tour, where they can learn more about the places that shaped our town. The tour utilizes both the Districts app and a transcript, which is available at tinyurl.com/TOW-tour. Copies of the transcript are also available at Owl Canyon Coffee, located at 3745 West Cleveland Avenue in Wellington. Links to the Main Street website, the Districts app, and the Downtown Wellington Historic Tour transcript are all listed in the notes for this episode. That's all for this episode of Around the Well. Special thanks to Melanie Murphy, Sherry Leeper, Annie Lindgren, and Mark Gabbert for talking with us about historical preservation and what it means to Wellington. remember to check the episode notes for links to the resources we talked about, and while you're there, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next episode. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you next time on Around the Well.